All right, everyone. So, this is a vid I've wanted to do for a long time. I typed up a script for it and everything, and I'm just too lazy to get in front of the camera and memorize the script and do all that cool production stuff. So, I'm just going to sit down here. I got the script in front of me. I'm going to read a bit of it. I'm just going to go off the cuff, and I'm going to get my thoughts out on this one. So, basically, this one is about. Something I like to call the Arlong Park Litmus test. And if you're a fan of One Piece, you probably don't recognize what that is, but you're familiar with what I'm talking about. That would be when you're trying to get someone into the series, or when someone was trying to get you into the series, and they said, "Listen, just watch the series up until the Arlong Park arc is over, and if you don't like it by then, you can stop watching it." So basically, yeah, watch the series. If you like it up to Arlong, then keep watching. If you don't, then drop it. And that's sort of like the litmus test to get people into One Piece, because this test is saying one of two things. It's basically saying one, the beginning of One Piece isn't that good, and two, it's a long series, so if you want to dedicate your time to it, just watch up to this point, and yeah, if you like it, keep going. If you don't, stop. And I kind of wanted to analyze this point because I don't know if it's 100% accurate, and I don't know if it's the best thing to do, but that's what we got the script here for. I wrote the script probably like 2 years ago, so I don't even know what it says, but I'll start reading it from here. It says, okay, yeah. If you don't like One Piece by the end of Arlong Park, you won't like the series as a whole. Now, this is something I've been hearing ever since I got into One Piece. I've heard friends say it, I've seen it online, and it just seems like a fairly well known piece of advice to give newcomers getting into the series. This statement implies two things, which I already said. The first is that One Piece is a very long series, which, look, it is. And this implies that the very beginning of One Piece doesn't really grab you in. Like, you kind of got to give it some time to get warmed up to it. The thing is, I've never heard anyone question it, and that is true. I always hear people toss that out, and I've never heard any arguments towards it. That's just it. Someone says it, watch it up until Arlong Park, and most people, I mean, for the most part, they agree with that. Further than that, I've never heard anyone give a different point in the series in which someone should watch up to besides Arlong Park. It's always Arlong Park. So I want to take a look at this, and I want to see, is there a better point in the series in which we should start saying? And if it is Arlong Park, what is the moment? What is the one moment that you're referring to? Because an arc, I mean, that's like I know it's like 15 episodes. I don't know how many chapters it is, but I mean, it's a pretty big thing. So I want to see a moment. If you don't like One Piece by this one moment of the arc, then you got to stop watching it. So let's go further on with this script. All right, let's start with the positives of Arlong Park and why this statement works pretty well. For starters, we have Arlong, the guy whose name is in the title of the arc. Arlong is without a doubt the first true villain of the One Piece series. He is both extremely diabolical as well as intimidating and relatively strong compared to the Straw Hat crew at this time. And I don't think there's any debate towards that. And yeah, villains like Buggy the Clown would later have more relevance in the series than a villain such as Arlong would. But up until that point, Buggy was kind of a joke. You had Kuro, who was kind of intimidating. He was kind of an evil guy, but at the same time, his whole plan was just like, all right, it wasn't a big deal. You just go there, you beat him up, and you leave. And that was that. And who else do you have? You have Axe Hand Morgan was actually the first one. Another just meathead, 2-episode villain. Just beat him up. That's the end of the story. And then the last one you'd have was Don Krieg, who I'm not going to say he's a bad villain, but he's definitely not a good villain in any sense of the word. He's just a villain, and he serves the purpose of his arc very well, but he's not a memorable villain like Arlong is. Arlong, you see him, and not only is his design memorable, but, the flashback with Nami is very memorable. His present-day actions are memorable. He's strong, like I say in the script. He actually, he kind of poses a challenge to Luffy when he's fighting him, and not just gimmicks, besides the throwing him in the water gimmick, but you feel like he actually has raw strength, and that he's a formidable foe for the Straw Hats to take down. And it's no surprise that Luffy gets his bounty, his first bounty, I think, after this one, because this is a truly tough opponent he fights. So yeah, that is totally a positive for the arc. I think I go up in the rest of the script. I talk about the other villains, like I just said. Now, I also bring up Mihawk, who shows up in the Baratier arc. And I'm not really going to go into him because he's not really a villain in that arc at all. He's more of a challenge for Zoro. He's Zoro's end goal. And he's not really the villain of that arc. But, I mean, if you had to say who's the best villain who appears in the East Blue, and you include him, it's got to be him. But that's not an argument. That is not on the table. So let's just forget about him. So Arlong really works as a villain. All we need to see is this guy killing Nami's mother figure in cold blood, and we have our first serious villain of the series. That is very true, because we don't see any of these other guys do something that drastic, especially to a main character. For the first time, we really want to see Luffy pummel this guy for what he did to Nami and the people of Kokoyashi Village, which is why this arc as a whole stands out among other arcs in the East Blue. The dramatic tension is through the roof. And to add to that, he's not a pushover like Kuro or Buggy, as I said. When Luffy marches through the gates of Arlong Park and Sucker punches Arlong, we as the audience feel both ecstatic to see this fucker get decked, but also anxious for Luffy because we know it's not going to be an easy fight. Arlong's villainy enhances Luffy as a character as well. Like, we all knew Luffy was a good guy from the beginning, but this is the first time he really does something meaningful for the sake of his crew. I'm not going to go more into that. The script says what it says. Now let's talk about the flashback. One Piece is famous for its dramatic and tragic flashbacks, and Nami's in this arc is the first great one. Sanji had a great flashback in Baratier, but Nami's really sets the tone for how tragic these Straw Hat backstories could get. I mean, she watches her mother die in front of her. And then from the age of 7, she takes, or whatever age, I think I put an asterisk here because I don't know exactly what age, but she takes it upon herself to work for the man who killed her mother to buy back the freedom of her village. Sanji's backstory never got to this level, and I'm talking about the original Baratier flashback. I'm not talking about the Whole Cake Island one. It should go without saying, but I just want to make it clear. Sanji's backstory never got this level of sadness. After Nami, we get backstories like Chopper, Nico, Robin, Frankie, Brooke. All of them were gut-wrenching stories, so it makes sense to someone would have to see one of these flashbacks to really determine whether or not they like the series. And like I said, Nami's is the first. 100% agree with what I just said here. I mean, I don't have to say that, but yeah, Sanji's is a good taste of flashbacks in One Piece, kind of a good intro. Like, look, there's flashbacks in the story, and a lot of them take a more serious tone than the present day story, and they tie back to what's going on in the present day plot. But I feel like this is a very good argument for this Arlong Park litmus test, as I'm calling it, because, as I say here, there are tons of tragic flashbacks in One Piece. You have Trafalgar Law, I didn't even mention here, is another one of them. And you really gotta watch up towards Arlong Park to even get the first one. So if you enjoyed that part of Arlong Park, then yeah, you should probably continue watching the series because there's more where that came from. And all right, here. Lastly, I want to talk about how Oda likes to write his arcs. See, I don't even know what I'm going to say here, so I'm excited to read this. Usually he will plant seeds in now I know. He will plant seeds in earlier arcs leading up to the big arc in which all the plot threads culminate. For example, Oda introduced Vivi and the characters of Baroque Works and Whiskey Peak, and the storyline is resolved in the Alabasta arc. Now in the East Blue, he didn't really do this too much. All of the arcs were self-contained stories. This comes with one major exception, and that's the Arlong Park arc. Oda planted the seeds for this arc from the very beginning of the series. If you're watching the anime, you see Nami in episode 1. She's sneaking onto a pirate ship and stealing treasure, and you don't get the payoff for why she's doing it until Arlong Park. When we're introduced to Nami, we find out that she loves treasure, so we just assume that this is a character quirk and why she was on Alvida's ship. So this is another thing that Oda does very well, is introducing character quirks. And we have them pay off later in the story. So technically the first time he does this is with Kuro and the glasses, but it's on a much smaller scale. That's on a much smaller scale than with Nami. Nami is a major character. Kuro is just a one-off villain. The next seed he plants is when Luffy tries to recruit Nami to the crew during the Orangetown or Buggy arc. She's noticeably hesitant and professes a hatred of pirates, and even though she agrees to join, it's on her own terms, leaving it open-ended. This is followed up before the Baratie arc when Johnny and Yosaku pull out a wanted poster of Arlong. Nami sees it and her reaction says enough. Okay, so you get what I'm trying to say here. That all the other East Blue arcs are self-contained stories, whereas Arlong Park had foreshadowing for it. There was events to lead up to Arlong Park. And as they say here, it almost serves as the culmination of the East Blue saga. Besides, of course... Actually, no, it is the culmination of the East Blue saga. All the arcs in East Blue lead up to Arlong Park. I'm trying to think, what's the name of that island? Logtown. Logtown is more of just of a lead-in to the Grand Line. It's not really a culmination of all the stuff that happened in the East Blue, besides Buggy coming back and stuff. I mean, there is an argument for that one. I don't want to totally discount it, but I'd make the argument that Arlong Park is. So, yeah, this is it's Oda's ability to present small details that ultimately foreshadow big events is a staple of the series that gets its start with the Arlong Park arc and the events leading up to it. Yeah, I agree with that. Now let's shift gears away from the Arlong Park arc and start looking at some of the other arcs in One Piece that could possibly get people hooked. So this is where we're going to start shifting gears and say, all right, that's why Arlong Park is good, but let's maybe see if there's an earlier arc that could hook people in besides Arlong Park. So, all right, let's discuss this. If you're reading the manga, I believe the first chapter is amazing. It's incredible, and it perfectly demonstrates what the series represents in only 50 pages. So without going too much into detail, I do believe that I have enhanced appreciation for this chapter after already having read the entire series. So maybe it's not that good of a hook in, but when I reread that chapter, it's incredible. It's amazing. I love chapter 1 so much. And I love to look back at how things started, knowing where everything is going to go. But, yeah, for that reason, I wouldn't say it serves as an immediate tension grabber for anyone starting the series. Some people may fail to or absolutely fall in love with One Piece from chapter 1, don't get me wrong, but most people would have to read more until they really get hooked. So, as for the anime, I don't think the first episode is that good, and the best part of that first episode is the cliffhanger with Zoro, seeing him on that stake and that guitar screech and all that shit. That's cool in the first episode, but the whole first episode as a whole is pretty boring. So yeah, you can't hook people in with the first episode. Don't have much to say about the Morgan, Buggy, and Kuro arcs. They're not bad arcs, but the series was still very early on. You can tell it was trying to get its footing. People say the series doesn't start getting good until Arlong. These are the arcs that they're setting aside as average. So yeah, when people say wait till Arlong, they're basically saying Kuro, Morgan, Buggy, those arcs suck. Like, forget about those. Or not terrible, but they're just average. But wait until it gets really good. Now, I do want to say a few things about Baratie, because that's personally one of my favorite arcs. Probably my favorite arc in the East Blue. It's just very personal. It's my opinion, and I'd say this is where the series for me started to pick up, and I'll try to remain objective about it because I can see why people don't think it's as effective as Arlong Park, but I think Baratie came before Arlong Park, and it really showcased a lot of Oda's writing talents, such as the world building aspect in Baratie, having Mihawk show up. That was the first piece of major world building in the series where you could get the scope of this world, because up until this point Zoro did not have any problems taking down his opponents. You can Kabaji or whatever that guy's name was, you kind of had a little struggle with him, but Zoro took him down. It's just all in a day's work. Gets a couple cut up a bit, that's it. But Mihawk comes in and just destroys him with a razor, a shaving razor, and this is the first time in the series where it's clear this is going to be a long series. This is not going to just be a short, they go to the Grand Line, they romp through it, they get the One Piece, and that's it. You knew there is a whole world of difference between where they are right now and Mihawk, who's kind of at the top of the world. So for me, and probably a lot of others, this opened our eyes to the series' full potential. So that kind of got me hooked into it, but for most people, I'd still say it's Arlong. Okay, so now I want to talk about what you'd miss if you just stopped at Arlong Park. And I want to find something that could potentially interest someone that dropped the series at Arlong, because Arlong didn't have it. Anything leading up to Arlong didn't have it. But something later in the series may have hooked this particular reader or viewer. So, for if you're trying to get someone to read the manga, I don't see the point in telling them to stop at Arlong Park, because Arlong Park ends at chapter 95 and they get to the Grand Line to chapter 100 at chapter 100. So you might as well just tell them read up until the Grand Line, read the first 100 chapters, because why not at that point? I mean, I don't think you're going to get anyone hooked with Logtown if they didn't like Arlong Park, but just let them finish that saga, tell them to read up to Logtown. I like Logtown more than Arlong, but that's personal again. If we're talking about the anime, after Arlong is where the first filler arc is, so yeah, I feel like it's appropriate to tell them to watch up to Arlong and call it a day. And there's filler in Logtown too. I'll talk about Logtown for a couple seconds. It's a very short arc, and I do think it's very meaningful as a whole to the series. But like Chapter 1, there's a lot of things in the arc that are just better appreciated in subsequent viewings or read-throughs. Some of the things would be... some of the things that it has to offer on a first read-through, you get the first like crazy devil fruit power, which is Captain Smoker's. You get some more lore about Goldie Roger, some more world building in that sense. You get the introduction of Dragon, spoiler alert. So it's a mysterious character, as I wrote in the script. I guess I wasn't trying to spoil, but it's Dragon. It's Dragon. And you get an amazing scene with Luffy on the execution platform. Perhaps the first indication that this guy truly has what it takes to become the king of the pirates. And lastly, you get the crew's triumphant entrance into the Grand Line with the whole barrel, one of my favorite scenes in the series. So there's a lot going for Logtown, but maybe not enough to hook you in. So the East Blue arc really serves as a microcosm of what's to come later in the series, and I'd strongly encourage readers and viewers to at least see it to the end. But I really can't find anything too big in the Logtown portion of the story that would really grab anyone that really wasn't already invested. So Arlong Park test, it prevails. It's still true up until this point. But let's talk about Alabasta, because Alabasta and the whole Baroque Work saga, I think it was on the One Piece podcast, they said Alabasta was the arc for several years after it was published. And this is because it was the first big arc in the series. And I'm talking big arc. And it's what you think when you think of traditional shonen manga arc. This is the first one in One Piece to fit the bill. So because of that, I feel like many things that weren't present in this... There's a lot of things in Alabasta that weren't present up until this point in the story. You get a lot of time in the Alabasta saga to flesh everything out, and it's kind of more like a traditional shonen. So I feel like telling people to stop at Arlong, there might be one or two people that would miss out on Alabasta, be like, oh hey, Alabasta was actually kind of cool. So I think that's what I'm trying to say here in the script. I think I say a lot of shit. Like a lot of crazy shit. And I think I just go through the arc. Let me take a second to read it. Excuse me. Fuck it, I'll just read the whole thing. So first of all, the sense of adventure was vamped up from the moment they entered the Grand Line. They are flown straight into an enormous whale. And as they go inside this whale, it goes without saying the series did not... and they go inside the whale. Okay, that's crazy, yeah. It goes without saying that the series did not include locations this unique and wacky up until here. Yeah, so the locations in the East Blue are pretty tame. The first location they go in the Grand Line is inside of a whale. So, yeah, that is something that the East Blue does not have. The wacky locations, just crazy shit happening. The closest it came is with the Sea Restaurant, but that could exist in the real world. So soon after, Crocus explains how crazy the Grand Line is, with its crazy weather phenomena and islands you cannot navigate by the use of a normal compass. And this is with the appearance of the Calm Belt and the Reverse Mountain during Logtown arc, and a picture of the One Piece world starts to get filled in. All of this is revealed after Arlong Park. Yeah, so I think what I was trying to say there is that the map of the world, what the world looks like, how it functions, is not understood up until the end of Arlong Park. You have to continue after that to get a sense of how this world operates. So that is another thing that you'd miss. Um, you get so yeah, rubber chop powers. You get a guy stuck in a treasure chest. You get Mary, whatever it is. But those are just the crazy things up until Arlong Park. But you didn't get crazy shit until after Arlong Park. So Oda wastes no time in kicking off this adventure. The Straw Hats voyage to an island with mountains covered in tombstones, an island dominated by dinosaurs and a friendly pair of giants, an island of snow-covered mountains, and an island of sand-filled desert to match the snow. So you get the whole gamut of locations. You get a forest, you get a desert, you get snowy mountains, you get everything. All the while, he spins a story of Jesus Christ, I can't fucking read right now. He spins a story of the sabotage of a nation's government and how a man and a team of bounty hunters turn the people of that country against each other. This is the seed planting I mentioned earlier with Nami and Arlong, but on a much larger scale. The pace in which they travel through the first 3 islands of the saga, Whiskey Peak, Little Garden, and Drum Island, is pretty fast. The adventure does not halt for the development of the story. It just keeps going. He throws new things at you constantly, and you just have to keep up with it. It's a rush. It's a rush. Once the story does come to a head, everything culminates in the Alabasta arc. This arc essentially has everything the Arlong Park has and more. You have the tragedy, the touching moments, the strong villain, but you also add in the first really badass fights of the series, and you get more considerable world-building aspects with ancient weapons and poneglyphs. You get Alabasta is basically the template in which all other big One Piece arcs are built upon. That's the standard one. So, unfortunately, telling people to watch or read up to Alabasta is a little impractical. You'd be asking a lot to get them that deep in the series, and I admit most people who aren't hooked on One Piece by Arlong Park wouldn't love Alabasta. A lot of this has to do with the style of the series. It's hard to discuss the style as it's a very intangible thing, but it's one of the first things people catch when they're starting a new series, like the art style, how the characters look, how they move, how they talk to each other, all that stuff. If you were turned off by the style and some of the craziness of One Piece from the East Blue parts, you definitely wouldn't like the style moving forward. That's not to say the series doesn't go under any stylistic changes, but it only gets crazier after East Blue. But who knows, maybe that extra level of bonkers will attract some people. That's why I'll say this. And this is the major moral of this video. So listen up. Most people who don't like One Piece by the end of Arlong Park won't like the series. I'll repeat that. Most people who don't like One Piece by the end of Arlong Park won't like the series. But virtually nobody who doesn't like the series by the end of Alabasta will like the series moving forward. So I feel like the true litmus test, if you want an 100%, it's not even a litmus test at this point, the true scientific test, if you want to see if someone's going to like One Piece, is you sit them through all the way through Alabasta. And they like it, they'll continue liking it. If they don't like it, they will not like it moving forward. But since Alabasta might be a bit too much of an undertaking to ask someone to watch or read all of that and they don't even like it, I feel like Arlong Park is very fair. It's very fair because it's earlier on in the series and it's a good litmus test. It's good. Yeah, most people who don't like it up till this point won't like it moving forward. It's not absolute like Alabasta, but it's a good test. So, all right, and basically what I say is the one moment, what's the moment of Arlong Park? The point of no return. If you don't like the series up until this point, drop it. A lot of people will claim it's the march to Arlong Park, but that's just a kind of an anime thing. It's still cool in the manga, but in the anime you get the music, you get overtaken, you get the whole thing. It's very emotional in the anime. Whereas in the manga, it's still cool, but it doesn't have the same impact. But a moment that has big impact in both the anime and the manga is the Nami help me scene with Luffy giving her the straw hat. That is a fantastic scene. It's one of my favorites in the series, and I feel like that's the moment. You gotta read up to that moment. You gotta watch up to that moment. You can't drop One Piece before you see that. You gotta see that. And it helps too because the overtaken is gonna happen right after it. So you're getting that whole thing. You gotta watch up to that. You really do. That's it. That's the real litmus test. It's not Arlong as a villain. It's not any of this other shit I've been talking about. It's that moment. So yeah. Anyways, I think it's not a foolproof test, but it does well enough to get the Arlong Park litmus test. It does its job. It's probably mostly accurate in getting disseminating the fans from the people that won't like the series. So because of that, I'd say it's pretty accurate. And yeah, this is a very long-winded video, but I just wanted to get the script off my chest. I've had it for a while, and I stumbled through a lot of the script reading it. So probably not the best video. I probably could do another take, probably reading it again, but it's off the cuff. I just wanted to say what I had to say. Next video will be the big video. This is the video I want to do. I'm going to have it fully scripted. I'm going to actually sit down and read this. I'm going to do multiple takes. I'm going to bring my real talking voice out for this one. I'm going to actually enunciate everything and say it, but that's going to be the Jaya video. Jaya. Why Jaya is the best arc in the series, or at least why it's my favorite arc in the series. Jaya. That's the next video. Stay tuned.